Hey, business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 125,000 bonus miles for a limited time through October 29th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends October 29th, 2025.
At Talos, we know cybersecurity can be tough and you can't protect everything, but with Talos, you can secure what matters most. With Talos industry-leading platforms, you can protect critical applications, data, and identities, anywhere and at scale with the highest ROI. That's why the most trusted brands and largest banks, retailers, and healthcare companies in the world rely on Talos to protect what matters most. Applications, data, and identities. That's Talos, T-H-A-L-E-S. Learn more at talosgroup.com/cyber.
Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
I'm hoping they heard you say action then, like some 1940s adventure film director. Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. How are you this afternoon, Kieran? It's Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah,
First of October, Kieran, the second best day of the year.
So you can now officially start celebrating Christmas. Is that how it works?
That's how it works. I can listen to some Christmas music, watch a Christmas film for the next 2 days, and park it for a month.
Very good, very good. Now I'm good apart from our toaster has ceased working, and I didn't know that there was so much in the world of toasters. Apparently, you can now get a 3-slice toaster. Now I can understand a 2, and I can understand a 4. But a 3-slice toaster, that's just done me in.
Well, also, I'm going to say this, Kieran, young people won't have a clue what I'm talking about here. It will never make toast as well as putting a slice of bread under a grill on top of your oven.
True.
That made the best. I was idly watching a Nigella sit program the other night, in the absence of either Repair Shop or MasterChef Australia to watch. And I'm not a massive fan of Nigella. She's a lovely lady. I like her, but I get a bit annoyed when you're watching her shows and she just says, just pop down your local shop and get some Lebanese dukalaka. And if you can't get that, then don't worry about making the dish. It's like, well, we haven't all got local shops like you have. But she had a toaster that was see-through.
Oh.
Yeah, you could see, it was entirely see-through, so you can look into, because that's the other things, it drives certain people in my house mad because I'm constantly checking whether the toast is done by popping it up, because it's the only way you can check the toast. How else can you check it?
Yeah.
Nigella's got us. I would guess it's from John Lewis. I would guess, but it's see-through, so you can just look at it. I imagine it's probably wide enough to put sourdough in if you were idiot enough to want to toast sourdough. I don't know if you want to toast holes. Why would you want to toast holes? I don't know. Why we're talking about this, Kieran, when we've got a lot of really big news stories.
And we've got a BAFTA flying out of our window as I speak.
2 stories about the Premier League to start, Kieran. The first one, as you predicted, these legal fees and other running costs are starting to annoy many of the members of the Premier League, Kieran.
That's right. If we take a look over what's happened in the last decade, first of all, let's give the Premier League some credit. Its ability to bring in more money deserves a lot of praise. New TV deals domestically, new sponsorship deals, and so on. That has been very spectacular. But the Premier League's employment has trebled. Now, for me, old school, that means creating jobs.
Yeah,
I'm not from the Jim Ratcliffe school of thought when it comes to jobs, that job creation is a bad thing. I personally think that's a good thing. But those jobs themselves individually are actually quite expensive. They work out as 140 grand per person. Yes, if that's what the tea ladies are on.
Yeah.
It could be the good quality toast at Premier League HQ. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. So that's those costs are up. But of course, the big one is legal fees. We managed to access some data, and in 21 and 2022, the legal costs over those 2 years was £12.7 million. But in 24 and 2025, it's gone up to 92.7. So it's an increase of £80 million. Now, that's going to be Nottingham Forest, that's going to be Leicester City, that's going to be Everton, and of course, it's going to be Manchester City. And we've not yet finished when it comes to Manchester City. So who is bearing those costs? And this is where you rightly pointed out that there is an issue. That money is paid out by the Premier League, and then whatever's left over is doled out to the 20 clubs. So Steve Parish is going to be thinking, Tony Bloom's going to be thinking, David Sullivan's going to be thinking, Bill, I forgot his name's Bill at Bournemouth.
Bournemouth, yeah.
Bournemouth Bill.
That's right. Yeah.
Bournemouth Bill going, that's an extra £80 million. That's cost us £4 million. And I have heard this from more than one club. We're not interested in the Manchester City verdict. It has no impact. It is no set of consequences for us whatsoever. We were not denied a Champions League place. We were not denied participation in other competitions. We weren't prevented from winning a title. So, therefore, it seems to be done purely for the benefit of, I would say, no more than 3 or 4 clubs towards the top end of the Premier League, who potentially might be looking for some form of damages should Manchester City be found guilty, which we have discussed. So those costs are up. I think the other costs which are up are lobbying costs. And then I thought, well, why is lobbying costs going up? Well, we know that the Premier League's not very keen on the independent football regulator, so that's gone up from £4 million a year to £7 million a year. So that's the position we're in. So what does that explain? Well, that's why I think we now have a Premier League, which I wouldn't say it's civil war, but it's not very friendly towards everybody's out for themselves. I think the days of Richard Scudamore managing to say, look, I'm running this show, I'm running it well, just fall into line behind me. And the club said, yeah, okay. And all the votes were going through 20-0 as far as anything suggested by Scudamore. I think those days are now a long way back. It does explain the Premier League's opposition to the independent football regulator, because if its own costs are rising so much, then having to pay additional costs in relation to IFR is not going to help. Although, in my view, if the IFR can do the job more efficiently and cheaper than the Premier League, there could be savings down the road. It also explains why there's been no offer to the EFL, or rather, it will be an excuse offered by the Premier League. And I then I did have a chat with this with a secret lawyer. I said, these legal costs, your boys are doing well out of this. He said, yeah, we are, deservedly so. I'm not a criticism. So what would you have done to make it better? And he says, well, 115 charges is a really dumb thing to do. What the Premier League should have done is found 15 or 20 of those charges, which were absolute slam dunks. And then A, it could have been resolved a lot quicker. B, it would have been an awful lot cheaper. And thirdly, everybody would know where they stand at present. So if clubs wanted to then we don't know whether Manchester City would have been found guilty or innocent of those charges, but if Manchester City had been, we could then move on and deal with it on a personal level, and it wouldn't have impacted upon the clubs. And let's be honest, we both support the middle classes of the Premier League. That those clubs would not have been as financially disadvantaged as they had been. And I thought that was an interesting viewpoint. It's something I hadn't considered before, but it certainly is a lot of validity.
First of all, I like the way you refer to the lawyer, your boys, like they've had a good away win on the Saturday. Your boys have done well. Your boys have done very well, and will continue to do well. With regards to that, well, we're paying enough money as it is without having to pay for the regulator. Well, the obvious response to that from those of us who want a regulator is that you shouldn't be paying that much. These are not good costs that you're paying. These are not things you're forced to pay. Because I have to say, if I was go back to John Lewis, if I was a shareholder of John Lewis or the shareholder of an energy company or a railway company, and at the end of each year I was told, well, £92 million of your potential dividend has gone on legal costs, and that's gone up by £80 million in 2 seasons, you'd be in any other organisation, you'd be asking questions about the size of that budget, especially when most of these legal costs are lost because they lose. It wouldn't be too bad if you think, well, okay, well they spent all that money on legal costs, but at least they were justified because Team A had a points deduction, or Team B was fined for. But Team A and Team B are laughing the Premier League out of court.
They are, and as we've seen, there's been quite a few clubs who might be 2-1 or 3-1 down in the 89th minute, and they look to the bench, and there's a man looking confident on the bench, and he comes off and he takes off, and on the back of his shirt it says DeMarco. And the Premier League just go, oh, all right, and then he knocks one in from 40 yards, and then nutmegs the keeper, and they got a victory for the clubs.
Right. Do you know what, Gil? Increasingly, the more you read about these legal cases, the more you think it doesn't need Nick DeMarco. I mean, you and I, given half an hour in a pub, could come up with a defence that would get us a lot of money from the Premier League. Also, last week, Kieran, there was a Premier League. I like the way they call it shareholders meeting, but basically it's a member of the meeting of the Premier League clubs, which the Athletic, amongst others, were reporting got quite fractious as disagreements amongst the members, especially about realigning PSR rules with UEFA's rules, and possibly about how to change the PSR rules in future anyway. So what can you tell us about that?
Yes, I mean, there is a case for saying that UEFA now have 9 members of the Premier League playing in competitions. So therefore, Crystal Palace, Aston Villa, Newcastle, Manchester United and so on, sorry, not Manchester City and so on, all have to align with the UEFA rules, which means that they have members of staff who are spending time doing calculations, mucking around on spreadsheets and so on. And then they have to do a completely separate exercise for the Premier League. Well, that's just a duplication of labour. Yeah, that is wasted energy. So I can absolutely understand why there is a case for saying, let us have duplication of rules, because if you've got a £47.3 million loss for UEFA purposes, you've got a £47.3 million loss for Premier League purposes, as opposed to the mess that we have. So there is dissent. As I understand it, the proposals are along the lines of, for those clubs who are in UEFA competition, they will be allowed to spend 70% of revenue on wages, amortisation, blah, 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 in exactly the same way as we have under UEFA. But to allow those clubs who are at a disadvantage because they're not participating in UEFA competitions, they would be allowed to spend 85%. And this would sort of narrow the gap. And I see that, and I know this is going to be a bit painful for you guys. That's really bad news for Crystal Palace, because you would be restricted to paying 70% of wages compared to revenue in a competition which doesn't actually generate very much revenue in the first place, whereas competing clubs to yours would be able to spend that 85%. So I do think that's a little bit harsh. There has also been talk about this idea of anchoring. And for people not familiar, or people who have forgotten, I can perfectly understand why, how anchoring works is that you take the TV money from the club, effectively finishing bottom of the Premier League, you multiply that by a magic number, and that sets a flat wage cap for every club in the Premier League. But some clubs are very much opposed to it. The 2 Manchester clubs, I think Liverpool were probably opposed to it as well, because it ignores the capacity and the ability of those clubs to generate phenomenal amounts of money on the back of commercial and sponsorship deals. So that didn't manage to make much progress. And certainly from people that we've spoken to in the last 7 days, it was a case of they didn't even bother to put it for a vote because it was quite clear that it wouldn't have got the 14 hands raised that you're looking for.
I always knew getting into Europe was going to be bad news. It's just more trouble. It's strange, isn't it, how your own personal circumstances affect a story. This time last year, I would have listened with some interest to what you had to say, Kieran, and I'm guessing this time next year I would have just listened with some interest. This year, really concentrating on what you had to say there about teams in Europe. Sheffield Wednesday fans, Kieran, will be looking for any straw to clutch at the moment. They'll be, even if the lifebelt says Titanic on it, they'll probably grab it with both hands at the moment. And the fact that they're heading for a record number of embargoes, maybe that I know what it's like when a team's having a bad thing. Sometimes you grasp, you think, oh well, we might as well go down with a record number of points in because at least people will remember it. But I think then it's 2 extra, 5 embargoes, isn't there, Kieran, for Sheffield Wednesday? That's
right. And I do have some sympathy for the EFL here. They are, to a certain extent, constrained by their own rules, and they have to wait for Dejan Chansiri to muck up yet again, which will then allow them to put further pressure on him. So, yes, there have been 2 additional embargoes applied to Sheffield Wednesday Football Club, but I'm quite concerned about the nature of these. First of all, it's a failure to pay a football creditor. Now, a football creditor is you'd normally believe to be another club, but there's a separate embargo for amounts due to another club not being paid. So I think the football creditors are probably relating to players. So and that ties in with what we've seen at Sheffield Wednesday. And again, I think this is absolutely appalling, atrocious management. A day before payday, players were told that they are not going to be paid, and non-playing staff were told that they would be getting £1,000 maximum as far as the salaries that were due to them. Now, those members of staff have got direct debits, they've got mortgages, we've all got a credit rating. Yeah. All of those will be impacted negatively by Dejan Chansiri. He's not picking up the phone, he's not answering emails. Where he is, where he is difficult to determine. Where does that leave the players? Well, if you look at the FIFA regulations, potentially the players could now give 14 days notice, because this has now happened in 5 months out of the last 7. But it's all very well saying a player can walk away. How many clubs are looking for those players now? If you effectively said that Dejan Chansiri has caused the club to be in breach of contract, I suspect we will also be seeing a 2-tier system in operation. And I think here, from my understanding, and Barry Bannon, the Sheffield Wednesday captain, he was on a Scottish podcast, I think it was last week, and he was incredibly articulate, really eloquent, and very honest as to what's happened. He says, during the summer, those players who had some value in the transfer market, they were being paid in full, because it allowed the club to potentially sell the players for a fee. And those players where the club thought they couldn't get very much money or any money for the players, they were being treated as second-class citizens. And that is such a callous way of dealing with people. So that's where we stand. Are there any positives? Well, I think we did mention this last week. There is an outstanding loan due to a company called New Avenue Projects. I think it's around about £7.5 million secured on Hillsborough. That does not appear to have been called in. Now, why is that? It could be that the lender has decided that things could improve. He's more positive than most of us. Or it could be that the lender has got bit of a heart and says, I don't want to be seen to be the person that has caused the administration or worse in respect of Sheffield Wednesday Football Club, and therefore I'm prepared to take more time. But it's very sad, and the tragedy is that despite all of this, Wednesday had a 2-2 draw the other night with Birmingham, I believe it was, and the players are sort of adopting a siege mentality, and I think the Sheffield Wednesday fans should be proud of the players, and I'm sure that they are, even though I absolutely respect those Sheffield Wednesday fans who are boycotting the matches by trying to put pressure on Chansiri to reduce the revenues coming in and to force his hand in terms of selling the club at an acceptable price.
If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
Friday on NBC, Jimmy Fallon and Bozoma St. John host the incredible new competition show.
I hired 10 creatives from all walks of life. They will be battling it out to see who can impress the world's biggest brands.
This is a huge opportunity.
This is the battle for the next big idea.
This is not play.
We're spending millions of dollars.
I'm so excited to embark on this adventure with all of you.
May the best idea win!
On Brand with Jimmy Fallon, Friday on NBC.
You say we've all got a credit rating, Kieran. I'm sure I have. I tend. It's one of those things I think if I don't look at it, I can assume it's really good. There's a few things off the back of that, Kieran. First of all, it's interesting that you talk about the results. I think one of the teams that Palace fans love more than any other was the 2010 team that kept us up when we were in administration, when a certain manager disappeared as quickly as he could, and several players did. But a team basically of misfits, ne'er-do-wells, and youngsters kept us in the championship and laid the foundation for what's happening now. And that's a team that we learned. And I think Barry Bannon is clearly leading that. I think he's done an incredible job for Sheffield Wednesday Football Club. And I'd love to, if anybody here is listening to this knows how we can get hold of him, because I'd love to talk to him to get his insight into this situation. Just a couple of other things, Kieran. You say that loan hasn't been called in. Is there a possibility then that the lender has been talking to Chansiri, or has just decided there is no point calling in a loan that isn't going to get paid, as you say, that you might as well wait and see how it transpires? And secondly, you say you think the football creditor must be a player rather than another club. So, because I assumed it would be transfer fees to another club. Would that be the same players? Would that mean, is that their wages? I'm trying to find an elegant way of saying it. It's just the fact they're owed wages. Does that make them the football creditor, or will one particular player have said, I haven't been paid bonuses or whatever, so
it could be either. It could be that there was a contractual obligation to pay a player a loyalty bonus or something that has not gone through, separate to wages. Certainly, we know that the wages have not been paid. It could be simply that the EFL just wants to be seen to be putting on as much pressure onto Dejan Chansiri as it can. The local MP is doing so. Certainly, Chansiri isn't getting any plaudits in the local media as well, and the guys that work at the Sheffield newspapers, they deserve a lot of credit for keeping the fans informed through social media, papers themselves. The likes of Alan Biggs, who's I know from sort of Sky Days and so on. He's very vocal. These people are trying to do, even if it's a little, in terms of getting it through to Chansiri's ears, then they're doing all that they can.
And what about the idea that Chansiri may be talking to the people that he owes £7.5 million to, I'm not saying that they will be sentimental, but because it's big business and investment companies. But is there a chance that they may just to think there is no point calling this loan in? He hasn't got the money.
Yeah, well, if they call in the loan, then a company has to go into administration because he's not got the cash to pay it. So whether that company would be the company which owns Hillsborough or whether it would be the football club, I mean, the money is owed by I think it's Sheffield. Well, it's either Sheffield 2, 3, 4, or 5. I think it's Sheffield 3. So that would put pressure on. But what good would it do? Hillsborough is worth more than 7.4 million.
Right. Okay.
So right. From his point of view, if he just lets it roll over, worst case scenario, he'll get his money back in due course through somebody else.
And finally, are we reaching the Die Young stage where the EFL essentially say you've got 2 weeks to sell this club or something drastic's about to happen?
I don't think so. And the reason why I say that is that the EFL did a lot of due diligence on Die Younger's background. And what they managed to find was that he had been found guilty of some financial misdemeanors back in China. And therefore, he was in breach of the owners and directors test rules.
Right, okay.
There is no evidence of that to date. But the same thing applies to Dejon Chansiri. There may be correspondence going from different parties to people involved in football finance, which might suggest otherwise, but there's no evidence. And I'm a great believer as an academic, you've got to get the hard evidence of these things. But we wait to see. The other big date, I mean, today we are recording on the 1st of October. We are now 31 days away from the introduction of the independent football regulator. I think a lot of people are seeing this as a first test as to whether the regulator can make a difference or not.
Well, this is the frustration, Kieran, is it not? I know they're not called fit and proper persons anymore. They've been through several name changes, but whether or not he was a fit and proper person when he first bought the club, he quite clearly isn't a fit and proper person to continue running the club, is he? By whatever criteria you use, his behaviour has shown recently that he's far from a fit and proper person to be running the club. And I know it's his business, so you can't force somebody out, but you should be able to force somebody out. And along with not paying your mortgage, not paying your bill, goes mental health issues, goes anxiety issues. It's not just, we can't pay the bills. It's like a month after month after month. It's wearing people down, Kieran. It's not right to do that in any organisation. It's not right to do that if you own a shop and you're employing 3 people, let alone you own a football club of great historic importance with a big global fan base. It's just something's got to be done about it. Now, we've talked a couple of times recently about how much Tottenham Hotspur Football Club are worth, Kieran, and it's a lot of money. And I wondered whether it was so much money that it might put people off trying to buy them, but clearly not, because there's been another expression of interest. Is that the phrase you people used this week?
Yes, and this is a strange one. Clearly there has been some form of communication between Spurs and a consortium which has been headed up by Brooklyn Eric, an American sort of tech influencer and so on. I've written in my notes the word fantasist.
Okay.
which I don't know why I've written those words. It could be connected to him, could be connected to somebody else. And he, by all accounts, has been talking about an offer of around about £3.2 billion. That's not far short of the figures which I've sort of been churning out, and I don't know the details of Spurs, so mine are very sort of 40,000 feet calculations. The reason why Spurs have put out this statement is that their shares are still traded on a stock market, not the stock market, but a minor stock market. And the way that works is that sort of I think it's about every 8 weeks, what I'm allowed to do is that if I'm a Spurs shareholder, I might say, I've got 10 shares up for sale, this is what I want for them, and if somebody wants to buy them, then they can they can match my price. So we often refer to it as price matching. And those shareholders need to be made aware as to the future of the company, the listed company in which they're invested in. There's 30,000 of them, by the way. They between them own around about 11% of Spurs. The remainder is owned by ENIC, and ENIC in due turn is owned by Daniel Levy, who has just under 30%, and a trust which has got absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with Joe Lewis.
Nothing to do.
Okay?
Yeah,
nothing
to
to
do.
do.
Yeah.
So what Spurs have said is that we've had this discussion. We are not interested. And I think what happens is now that Eric has to either make a formal offer, which he's not done to date, or he's not allowed to have any discussions for 6 months. I think we're in a similar position to that of Amanda Staveley as well. What Spurs have done in addition to this, and I think this story was broken by a friend of the show, the wonderful Matt Slater, is that the relationship that they have with Rothschilds, the the investment bank, has been terminated. Now, Rothschilds were originally employed by Daniel Levy probably about 5 or 6 years ago with the aim of trying to find some form of external investment. I think what Spurs are now trying to do is to say, we're battening down the hatches, we're not for sale, we don't even want to have a minority sale of the club. The new board of directors, along with with sort of the family trust, which has got nothing to do with Joe Lewis, of course, these people are in it certainly for the medium term, and are trying to put off all of the speculation. And I think the reason for the speculation is that if you talk to people in the world of finance, the story is that Spurs are not for sale as such, but they're open to inquiries. I think Spurs now want to say, due to the changes that have recently taken place, just go away. Yeah, we're not interested in the sale. Move on. So Rothschilds have been made to sort of be the fall guys in this. But they've done nothing wrong at all.
Yeah, the Tottenham statement said, and I quote, they have unequivocally rejected this expression of interest from Brooklyn Eric. A couple of things off the back of that, though. I mean, they did sell a minority stake last week, tiny, to Lord Ashcroft's son, for a start off. Secondly, when you say, no, not that stock market, the stock, that sounds like the punchline to a Two Ronnie sketch. No, I didn't know there was a minor stock market in play here. Thirdly, for all that they're indicating they don't want to sell the club, it's that kind of thing. Me thinks she doth protest too much, because in the first 5 years of this pod, Kieran, I don't think we ever mentioned the possibility of Spurs being sold at all. And now, on a fortnightly basis, we're talking about informal expressions of interests, bids for the club, how much is it worth, which makes you think that they would be open to selling it.
Well, yeah, let's deal with those issues one by one. In terms of Lord Ashcroft's son, it could be that he has bought shares in that small market that owns the 11%. These are, you've got 30,000 people who might be owning 1 shares, 10 shares, 100. So it could be that he's gone down that particular route, and I suspect that will be the case. As for the stock market itself, we have the London Stock Exchange. Now, if I want to buy 1,000 shares in Vodafone or Marks and Spencer's or BT Group, whatever it's want to do, what I do is I go onto an app and I buy those shares. Boom. And that's sort of an instant transaction, because there are people always willing to sell and there are people always willing to buy. In the case of Spurs, there's a relatively small number of shareholders, and they don't have to apply, or they don't have to go along with the quite significantly strict rules that operate in the main London Stock Exchange. So it's a slightly more relaxed environment. As for the third issue, Spurs protesting too much, yeah, I mean, I've written down there, Mandy Rice-Davies.
Well, you would write that, Kieran, wouldn't you? There you are.
Yes.
Liverpool have shut down 145,000 ticket accounts, Kieran. I like to think that a lot of those, because Liverpool fans wrote them angry letters after we played them off the pitch on Saturday, but I believe it has very different connotations. It's a lot of ticket accounts to shut down, Kieran, isn't it?
That's right. To give people a little bit of background as to the position at Liverpool, Anfield has a capacity of, think of around about 61,000. There are less than 30,000 season ticket holders. So there's a lot of match day tickets available for every match. And if I've got this right, they put the tickets up for sale twice a year. So before the start of the season, and then I think I don't know when the second tranche is, and that means that you know which weekends Liverpool are due to be playing at home, and if you want to try to get a ticket for Bournemouth or Manchester United or whoever it's going to be, you can apply online. But in order to do that, you have to be a member of the scheme, and the scheme you can get the scheme for as little as £26.99. So what we are seeing is, let's be not blunt about it, organised crime has realised that if we get 1,000 accounts for £26.99 and we use bots and we use people in different countries, we can buy tickets at face price and then we can sell those at a multiple because it's Liverpool. And they are doing spectacularly well, apart from being played off the park against Palace. And they are a very, very popular football club, both domestically but also internationally. And I can confirm that. As you know, I've got an apartment in Liverpool. And sadly, the people that have got the lease on the apartment don't allow me to Airbnb it for weekends when Liverpool are at home.
Oh no, Kieran!
Yeah, I didn't check the small print on that one. But you've only got to look at the what you can get for an Airbnb or hotels, and the rates go up by a factor of 3 or 4 when Liverpool are playing at home. That's not a criticism of Everton. And Evertonians will proudly say, well, we've got a local fan base, we don't need hotels. So that will be their response. So they've closed down 145,000 accounts. So that's, whether that's 140,000, £26.99, I don't know. There's been 1,100 lifetime bans given to people who have bought tickets and then sold them on. And the reason for that is that they want to show a deterrent. And to be fair to Liverpool, they have a very thorough system for assessing whether these bans should be given. If you want to appeal against the ban, there will be somebody from the club, and there'll also be somebody from the independent supporters branch of Liverpool. So there will be somebody representing the bans, and then the case will be heard on its merits. I was always sort of thinking, I was quite sceptical about whether clubs could make a lot of success in here, but they've also managed to identify people who are using burner phones. 500 people have been denied entry. So that's where we are. Now, you might be saying, well, 145,000 accounts closed. That's an awful lot of 26.99s. But I suspect that some of those people don't even have an account. And what they are doing is that they're setting up WhatsApp groups or Telegram accounts or so on, and they are claiming that they will show a QR code for a particular match, and you think you're buying that, and actually there's an awful lot of bad behaviour taking place. This is not restricted to Liverpool. It is happening at Manchester United as well, I can assure you, from sources in Manchester. I know that Arsenal, they have cancelled 74,000 accounts, which is half the number of Arsenal. Chelsea said that they had 350,000 bots trying to make purchases. And I say to those bots, here's a suggestion. Why don't you go and buy some tickets at Brighton? Because in 2 years' time, those players will be playing at Stamford Bridge. and you save yourself an awful lot of aggravation.
Yeah, or if you're a Chelsea fan, just ask Todd Bowley. He's always seems to have a few.
Well, yes. It's and noticeable that Vivid Seats, which is the unregulated seller of Premier League tickets, appears to have stopped selling them. I checked that. Now, I think the clubs deserve a lot of credit for this, because they could have just taken look, somebody's sitting in the seats, why should we care approach. But I know there's issues in terms of, I've got friends who sit in the COP and they say it's very evident when the non-regulars are there and it has an impact upon the atmosphere. I know Manchester City fans who have said even worse than that, it's when away fans end up sitting in the city end. And part of me says, hold on, we're supposed to be a civilised society. We should be able to accept somebody with a different viewpoint or support a different football club. But no, it's football. It's for that 90 minutes, you want to be able to give it loads, and you want to be able to give it loads in a collective environment. So I think the football clubs are doing an awful lot. Who's not doing a lot is the authorities. 12 arrests in a year for ticket touting. So where's the deterrent there? It's not.
My guess would be, Kieran, those clubs you mentioned have got more people working full time to spot ticket fraud than the Premier League, the FA have put together. I have to say, Kieran, I have the utmost respect for you on a daily basis, but I doff my cap that you even managed to crowbar in a Brighton Chelsea reference to a story about season 10. That's how much you don't like Chelsea, that you even managed to get that in there. The time was, Kieran, when we first started this pod, when the owner of Gillingham was a feisty little fella, Paul Scally, and we often wanted to say things about the feisty little fella, but because he was a feisty little fella, we were advised that perhaps we best not say things about the feisty little fella because he's so feisty. It seems like Gillingham's new owners are less worried about how feisty he is because they are suing him for a substantial amount of money.
Yes, the new owner of Gillingham, a guy called Brad Galinson, an American investor, he acquired 70% of Gillingham Football Club, leaving Paul Scally with the remaining 30%. So they're still a sizable part of the club, and Paul Scally has funded the club. There are many reasons to be less than fulsome in praise towards him, but we'll leave that for a live show after we stop recording. Paul Scally was voted off the board of directors around about 12 months ago for the way he treated staff due to queries about the way that the accounts or some of the finances were being arranged and so on. And that did seem a strange action at the time, given that he is the second biggest shareholder. But now Brad Galinson is suing him for, we don't know the exact details, although I think we might have access to the papers. So we'll go through those and perhaps update in due course. It was a £7 million takeover for 70% that values the club at £10 million on a full basis. Clearly, there have been things which were at the club, which didn't appear to be at the club in the papers, and vice versa. And it looks as if Mr. Galinson is taking Mr. Scally to the appropriate authorities to try to resolve this. I think Paul Scally lives in Dubai, but given that he's got 30% share in an English company, he will have to abide by English law.
Yeah, he may live in Dubai, but Paul Scally's always given me the impression that he'd rather sort things out in Wetherspoon's car park than in a court, to be perfectly honest. This next story, Kieran, I've already paid full attention to one story. This next story about Newcastle United and one share, I'm going to have to pay real attention to because I just assumed this was some sort of producer guy typographic. I can't get my head around this story at all.
Right. Newcastle United have issued one share to their owners, and that share has a face value of 5p. And the new owner has paid £106.5 million for that one share. So it does appear to be a bit of a disconnect. I would say to people, the face value of the share isn't irrelevant. So if I had a penny black, I used to be a big stamp collector. This would come as no surprise to people, of course. But if you go back to 1840 and Rowland Hill and the penny black, the twopenny blue, and so on, those stamps had a face value of one old pence, and today they are worth, especially if they were in mint condition, hadn't been used, they are worth a huge multiple of that. So just because a share's got a face value doesn't have anything to do with market value. And people say, well, why have they done it in that particular way? It's simply to make life a bit easier for themselves. Newcastle are losing money, so therefore they need additional funds to pay for outstanding transfer fee instalments, to pay for wages. And there's nothing sinister about that. It's very common at very many football clubs. The owners already own 100% of Newcastle United Football Club. So therefore, by issuing one more share, they still own 100% of Newcastle United Football Club. And they've simply just put in an extra £106 million to pay for the ongoing bills and the operational costs over the course of the next season or so.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
16 years from today, Greg Gerstner will finally land the perfect cannonball. Epic splash. Unsuspecting friends. A work of art only possible because Greg is already meeting all these same people at AARP volunteer and community events that keep him active and involved and help make sure his happiness lives as long as he does. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Learn more at aarp.org/local.
I dabbled with stamp collecting for about 2 weeks. It was always model soldiers with me. I dabbled stamp collecting for 2 weeks because I read somewhere that if you found an upside down stamp, it's going to be worth £1 million. It's like a 1933 penny. If you found an upside down stamp, first couple of packets didn't have an upside down stamp in. My attention span was then, as a 9-year-old, was very similar to how it is now. So also I couldn't be doing with the hinges.
Oh, yeah.
Licking the hinges. That sounds like got to be a punk B-side called Licking the Hinges somewhere in it. What I don't understand about, I understand this is a way of injecting money into the club. I get that. The thing I don't get is who decides that nominal face value of 5 pence in the first place. Why did they even bother to do that? Why 5 pence? Why not £10, £27.50? Who said, right, here we have got a share here worth 5 pence? Why just one? Why not? I'd say, well, we've got 2 shares here, we'll get 213 million.
Well, presumably because PIF didn't want to put 213 million into the club.
Oh, okay.
Right. So it was down to that. The nominal values of shares are an anachronism. They serve no purpose for man nor beast. I think it's just a historical anomaly. It will simply be a number which you will see in the club's constitution when the constitution was originally set up. It's a good soundbite for me when I put it out on Twitter, but it doesn't really mean that much. The important thing is that Newcastle have got £100 million to play with.
Well, I'll answer the question then that I guess I would say 70% of our listeners are asking. They've sold a share worth 5p for £106.5 million. If PIF had just given them £106.5 million, how would that affect PSR?
Right. Under the PSR rules, if you lend a football club money, that does not count towards PSR. And the reason for that is that the Premier League wants to encourage sustainability. The nature of a loan is that it has to be repaid. If instead you issue a share for £106 million, shares never have to be repaid. Sort of looking forwards. I always say to people, look in your rear mirror and look forwards as well. Are there any bumps in the road? Well, if it said in 5 years the loan had to be repaid, I've got a bump in the road coming up to me. In the form of shares, there's no bump in the road.
So in terms of any business, whatever it is, this is a perfectly legitimate way of putting money into a
absolutely
fund.
Yes.
Man United's new stadium is already a movable feast, Kieran.
Yes, and again, when I spoke to the secret architect,
secret architect. Now.
We do have a secret architect. Somebody of the world of architecture contacted me and said, "What do you think of?" Okay, well, it's a bit strange, especially those three bits which are supposedly looking like a trident. He said, "Don't worry, that won't go ahead." And what has happened is that Manchester United have dropped the canopy, and there was supposed to be sort of. It's a bit like a three. If you've ever been to a circus, it's a bit like having a circus which has got three peaks in the sort of around the ring for when people go to watch the activities there. The canopy was costing £300 million, which is an awful lot for a roof. Now it was a classic case of style over substance. So that has gone. We await to see if there's any other changes as far as the stadium is concerned. Again, when I spoke to the secret architect, he or she said to me, I don't think they're going to stay at 100,000 seats. I think that will be reduced. And the rationale behind there is that the top 10,000 seats are the most expensive ones to put in, because you're having to have that much more strength going into the building and so on, and because you are sitting up in the gods, even if it's Manchester United, you'll be struggling to see much. So he thinks, or she thinks, it's likely to be dropped to somewhere in the 85 to 90,000 region in due course, and that actually makes a lot of sense, because if you take a look at what we're seeing in the United States, where we've got these spectacular stadiums. You think about where the World Cup final, I think it's going to be at the SoFi Stadium. I think it's 70 to 80,000. There's far more people in the United States than there are in the UK. And yet in the United States, they always say, well, we're not going to go for why not go for 150,000 capacity stadium in a city the size of New York or San Fran? It's because the construction costs become very, very expensive as you go higher and higher. So that's where we are. There's still uncertainty over what's going to happen with I think there's a freight line which is we need to be moved. It looks as if the freight company is looking for sizable compensation for that. Now, should that compensation come from Manchester United? Should it come from central and local government? We await to see. But there are certainly changes, and I think we will see more changes as we go forwards.
I have been to a circus, Kieran, only the once. The famous one, Billy Smart, I presume. I went to Billy Smart Circus when I was a kid. As a kid, I was against circuses. I didn't like the idea that some poor elderly elephant was forced into doing tricks against its will. Clowns are not funny, and large tents have got a strange smell. But the reason I didn't go out, I got the ringmaster called me out. There was this magic person who they called him the fakir, who had the bed of nails thing. Lay on a bed of nails, and they said, we need a volunteer to stand on him to prove that this is, and he called me out. And as I went to stand on him, the ringmaster whispered in my ear, stand on his right shoulder, that puts the trigger down.
No.
Yeah, so it was like, so I'm standing there going, he's just told me the trick, and I still can't. I find them sinister. I think I've mentioned before in this pod, Kieran, that one of the worst players Crystal Palace ever had was Valérien Ismaël, who was we paid about £2.6 million for him, and it was every single pound of it was wasted. But he's now the decision of the manager of Blackburn Rovers. and he's very angry. And I can see, Kieran, why he's angry. I think I'm probably on his side in this decision that he's called disgraceful.
Yes, Blackburn Rovers were winning. I think it was against 10 men, Ipswich Town.
Yes, indeed.
At the weekend. I think it was also known as a wet one in Blackburn.
Yeah.
And given that it's normally sort of light drizzle is considered sunny, if it's a wet one in Blackburn, it's absolutely sheeting it down. And as a result, the referee decided to abandon the match. And I think abandon. Have you ever attended a abandon match?
I don't think I have. I think I've certainly been in the ground when the game was postponed just before kickoff, but not. I don't think I recall being at one that was abandoned. I've never been at one where a dog ran on the pitch either, which is a source of great regret.
Oh no,
no.
Yeah, I'll bring Finley to. I'll bring Finley to the derby.
Yeah, as long as I know it brings back unhappy memories. I think it's Brentford, wasn't it? Chick Bates, their keeper, was ended his career a dog on the pitch, but
Finley's not like that. So and then when you see the sights and you've got the groundsman, it was two groundsmen with two forks between them,
that would do it. Two groundsmen and King Canute.
So I think the appropriate decision was made to abandon the game because the ball was floating on the pitch, and therefore you couldn't play football as such. But what about the consequences? I mean, people might say, well, hold on, this is a football finance show. Well, there are financial consequences.
Indeed.
Because if Ipswich go on to win that match, despite being 1-0 down with 10 minutes to go, with 10 men in a replayed match, that would seem to give them a benefit in terms of their ability to return to the Premier League. There is precedent, though, when matches have been abandoned before. I do recall being 4-0 down at Swindon when the match got abandoned, and I think in the replay we managed to sneak a draw. This was about 1970s, 78, something like that, something horrendous like that. So there are now financial consequences of this. What does this mean for fans who have bought a ticket in good faith? I know from somebody that goes to cricket matches, normally if there's a minimum number of overs are bowled, then you don't get a refund, or if there's a full day's called off, you get a full refund. So we wait to see that. But from a footballing point of view, I can absolutely understand where Ismail is coming from. But he needs to look at the rule book, and I think the rule book is fairly clear here that rightly or wrongly, and if you've got an issue, deal with the people who devise the rules, that a replay of the match is going to have to take place.
But in terms of the financial aspect, especially for the fans, Kieran, because the cricket analogy is a good one, because Blackburn could argue, well, if you're a Blackburn fan and you had a ticket for that game, or you're a season ticket holder for that game, you got 82 minutes of football. So why should you get an entirely free football game next time? So we're going to charge you to go to that game as well. Then, of course, you've got Ipswich fans who go to every home and away game. So 600, 700, 1,000 of them are going to be, I guess it would cost you the best part of 150 quid to get to Blackburn and back to Ipswich by public transport plus food and whatever. So they're definitely going to be out of pocket if they have to pay again. So there are, you're right, the rules are the rules, but it's a shame that no one at the EFL is going, well, I'll tell you what, we'll fund the travel for the fans, or we'll buy a free pie for all the home fans.
Well, I think there's an opportunity for Blackburn Rovers to win some goodwill here by making such a decision. And we have seen some splendid gestures. We've got an interview with Harry Hugo on Friday, tomorrow, coming up, and where he reveals that for their first home match of the season, they paid for a coach trip for the away fans from Hungerford. Good things like that deserve praise, and Blackburn, if you are going to be charging Ipswich fans for the replayed match, then I think you should reach out in some way to reward them. And equally, Ipswich, why not go and put on a few free coaches Stoke City put on free coaches, I think, for every away match, and they deserve a huge amount of credit for that.
Well, we asked Harry Hugo, the owner of Farnham Town, in the interview about that, because we mentioned it on the news pod a few weeks ago at the start of the season, saying what a brilliant gesture this was by Farnham, that they paid for Hungerford Town fans. They booked a coach for Hungerford Town fans to come up. And Harry says, yes, it was a good gesture, but we actually made a profit out of it, because we bought 50 away fans that probably wouldn't have come to the game anyway. They bought tickets. They were in a good mood. They spent money in a bar that we wouldn't have made. So in the end, it's a brilliant PR gesture that didn't cost them any money. They would have still done it if it had cost them money. But, I think sometimes clubs miss out on an opportunity. They can get good PR and make a bit of money out of it, which I know it sounds cynical, but football clubs have got to do what they've got to do. And also, let's be fair, Kieran, Blackburn Rovers, having done a full Hartlepool with the local press, need as much good PR as they can get at the moment, don't they?
Yes, they have banned the Lancashire Telegraph local reporter from its property to what the club call unfair reporting. Now, we did cover this with Hartlepool recently. They banned Jeff Stelling effectively from the ground, stripped him of his presidential position, or he's resigned. Robbie Stelling, his son, who's the local reporter, he's been banned as well. I think this relates to the sale or non-sale of one of the players over the course of the summer, and the club have, I think the technical phrase is, seen their arse with the local reporter. There is a case for getting people around the table and saying, this is why we think what you said is wrong. And he might have said something which is unfair reporting. He might not. We don't know. But not having anybody reporting on Blackburn Rovers, it's bad news for all concerned. I think about local newspapers that I've read over the years. The first thing I always go to is the football pages. And you want your local scribe to be able to come up with stories and so on. Messy. Jaw is better than war.
Well, also what football clubs sometimes don't seem to realise is if you're a Blackburn fan and your club has banned the Daily Mail or the Sun or the Mirror, you're probably all for that. You're probably going, yeah, they did take it a bit of... When you ban the local paper, the fans don't like it. Because as you say, the fans have grown up with the local paper. The local paper are there through thick and thin. The local paper are there for the youth games, the whatever bizarre trophy the EFL come up with next season, in the middle of July. They're there for every game. So you want their support. And then what do you do when you've got good news to share with the community? You can't share it through the Lancashire Telegraph because you've banned them. 2 stories to end the pod, Kieran, both of which are abroad. The first one from Milan is, I think it's one of those stories you probably never thought you'd ever hear in your lifetime. Even even somebody with a passing interest in Italian football will raise their eyebrows at this. Yes.
The San Siro is an iconic stadium.
Yeah, been there.
I've got to be honest, it's also a stadium which is not in the best of nick. And the reason for that is that it's owned by the Milan City Council. And like many local government organisations, they have a pretty tight budget, which has been impacted negatively in recent years as the demands on local councils become greater and greater, and the money coming in has gone down. So therefore, it's not invested in the San Siro. But what it has agreed to do is to approve the sale of the San Siro to both Milan and Internazionale. And the benefit of this is that from reading reports, the clubs are going to get round a table, and the first thing they're going to do is that they're going to demolish 90% of the stadium. I think some of the more iconic elements of it are going to be kept, with a view to building a brand new stadium. I went to Roma 2 years ago, and again, I just wanted to say, I've been to Roma. I've watched my team play in Roma. It's absolutely fantastic. But compared to English stadiums, it really did look way behind the curve. So this gives the owners of both clubs an opportunity to invest. I think we'll be looking at somewhere in the region of a 60 to 70,000 capacity stadium. The only thing that does concern me is, as we know, it will probably take 2, 3, perhaps 4 years to build the new stadium. Where are they going to play in the interim? Because they can't go and play in each other's stadium because they share it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Kieran, because in Italy, more than any other country, you have this notion of two clubs sharing the Stadio Comunale, isn't it? It's a stadium owned by the city or the town, and it's one of those things that you never thought would ever be broken. So, but Turin have got their new stadium, and now it makes you think that once Milan have decided to do it, then all the other clubs that share a stadium will think, well, we're going to be falling even further behind financially here to keep them. Our last story, Kieran, we're always reluctant to mention this man's name, but Donald Trump possibly sulking at the outcome of the Ryder Cup because his cohorts of idiots in MAGA caps shouting obscenities at European golfers didn't have the desired effect. Has threatened to intervene in the World Cup, Kieran.
That's right. The World Cup is due to take place in 8 months' time, and some tickets have already gone on sale to people who have a Visa card. So that's the first tranche. I don't have a Visa card, so I'm gonna wait. So the second tranche are going on sale, I think, in November. And my view, as somebody that's had the privilege of being able to attend a few World Cups, is you get your tickets, and the next thing you do is you book your flights, and you're also booking your hotel, and you're organising yourself because you know that there is going to be a lot of demand. President Trump has said that he will move matches, or he may move matches at the World Cup from cities he thinks are unsafe. And this is likely to be New York, San Francisco, Boston, and so on.
Chicago, I think. So,
yes, Chicago, yeah. Absolutely. So, I'm not keen on any form of politics. Politics interfering in sport is something which never works out very well. It's very disappointing to hear. It's clearly indicative of somebody that has no understanding of football, no understanding of football fandom, because you wouldn't necessarily commit yourself. And if you've got 4 major cities are unsafe, I don't think it reflects very well on the person whose job it is to have a safe society.
2 things, Kieran. Why is it that Visa card holders have priority in booking tickets? And secondly, Trump has talked about his good friend Gianni Infantino quite a lot recently. This is going to put him on an opposition course with his good friend Gianni Infantino. My instinct is that Gianni Infantino will win any battle here. Am I right now? I can't see FIFA at this short notice agreeing to cities being moved, and we know money talks when it comes to Donald Trump, and it would seem to me that FIFA are not going to be very happy about this.
Well, just dealing with that first question in respect of Visa are one of FIFA's official partners, and as such, that gives them privileges. Why are Visa in partnership with FIFA? It's because they want to sell more Visa cards as opposed to MasterCards. So, when I first saw it, I'm probably the same as you. I looked at my debit card. I've got no idea whether my debit card's a Visa or a MasterCard. And I go, oh, it's a MasterCard. It means I missed the first batch of tickets. Fortunately, tickets to see The Cure in Dublin next June are not linked to whether you've got a Visa or a MasterCard. And when they went on sale at 9 o'clock this morning, I was bashing away. And gives me a chance to, the most feeble of excuses to see my dear old mum in Dublin, but also to see Robert Smith as well. Never been seen in the same room, my mum and Robert Smith. But when it comes to Infantino, I think some journalists have asked FIFA as to their response, and the response has been a big fat silence. I don't share your optimism. I think that FIFA will fold like a cheap suit when it comes to because FIFA don't give a damn about the fans. If there was an opportunity to play in a different city, that's absolutely fantastic, and we're not in a position to interfere with the internal. Perhaps the cities aren't safe. And I go, well, hold on. I think about Brazil in 2014, Russia in 2018, and probably most of all South Africa in 2010. Although I will give the South African government a bit of a plaudit here. I was at that World Cup, and there was a lot of scare stories before the World Cup took place about the safety of European fans, South American fans, people coming from elsewhere. I was told by quite a high source that the government had a word with some of the organised gangs and said, for 4 weeks, you're going to behave yourself. If you don't, you're going to end up in a prison or worse. And we ain't bothered about getting any evidence. We're just going to come for you. So therefore, it's a bit like the 1960s in London, where the craze kept London safe for everybody else.
It's a way of doing it. It's a way of doing it.
So it was an absolutely fantastic tournament.
I'm somewhat surprised by that prediction that FIFA will fold. Well, let's see how that plays out. Don't forget, you can now join our Price of Football Club, where you'll get ad-free listening, bonus episodes, access to a monthly Q&A Zoom with us, which is always fun. Many, many more. Just go to priceoffootball.com and click on Join the Club to sign up today. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and find us on YouTube. If you'd like to buy our book, you can find details on our website, priceoffootball.com. If you're a club member, you may already have heard our episode with Harry Hugo, or it will go up online a day earlier tomorrow. If not, that'll be ready for you on Friday. Well, it's Wednesday, so Thursday and Friday. If you're not in the club, you can listen to it on Friday. That's what I'm trying to say. Otherwise, we'll be back on Tuesday with our next questions pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thanks to everybody who's been in contact. Just a reminder, we are at the I'm going to have to call it Windsor Park. What's it called? The Clear Review. The Clear Review Stadium in Belfast on October the 14th. And we've been in touch. There's still a few tickets left, I believe. So we've been in touch with the Irish Football Association, and we're delighted to say that Conrad Kirkwood, the president of the Irish FA, has agreed to be a guest on stage with us, which is absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And anybody that's met Conrad will know that he's a man that can talk. Yeah. I met him in Berlin before the Euros final, and he's a man with many a tale, and he's a really good guy as well. So what we've said is that for anybody who is connected to a club in Northern Ireland, you can get a 15% discount on ticket prices if you just put in SAVE15 into the discount code. And I've been in contact with a couple of educational establishments. We know from when Kevin and I have done the shows at Liverpool University how popular this is with students. So if you are a student, or if you are teaching a student and you're from Northern Ireland, if you put in student 50, you'll get 50% off. So it'll only be 11 quid less than 11 quid to turn up. So it'd be great to see you. We're really looking forward to it, and we're playing in the Pat Jennings suite, which makes me even more excited.
I can't wait to be in the Pat Jennings. I'm so excited when I met Pat Jennings, because that was, I just remember, watching a big match as a kid. That was one of the things that Brian Moore, of blessed memory, was obsessed with, the size of Pat Jennings' hands.
Yes, he was.
The fact that he could pick up a football with one hand, which I think it's probably quite a few people, but it's just one of those people, Pat Jennings, and I'm pleased to have this confirmed by many other people, just delightful man. But as somebody in my generation, Pat Jennings walks in the room, he just goes, Pat Jennings. You just kind of start hopping from foot to foot in the hope that he might notice you and just go, oh, Pat. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.